PXG has done it again with the launch of a new lineup of drivers, fairways, hybrids, and irons. The new Gen 5 golf clubs deliver significantly increased MOI, faster ball speeds, longer distances, and tighter dispersions, all coupled with the exceptional feel and sound golfers have come to expect from PXG. Schedule your custom fitting or buy online at pxg.com. And we're back, Stripe Show Podcast on a Monday. I'm your host, Travis Fulton. Thank you for making us part of your day. I hope you had a terrific weekend as we roll on here into October. I had a very busy week last week, which we'll talk about. My trip out to Las Vegas, Shriners Children's Open, back to Jacksonville, Constellation, Furyk and Friends, PGA Tour Champions. We launched a special pod Sunday out there as a kickoff to my new partnership with ViStar Credit Union, which I'm very excited about. Very excited about. We were in the Patriots Outpost out there on the 7th green. Had my longtime friend and former student Fred Funk on the podcast. Nota Big A III came out. It was good to see him as he made his debut on PGA Tour Champions. Check it out. Special one there on Sunday. Going to talk about Las Vegas. Tom Kim as he gets his second win. Last time to do that, second win under the age of 21. It was a gentleman by the name of Tiger Woods. That's what we're talking about. It's kind of caliber of young player we're talking about. I'm going to talk about what I saw out there with Tom Kim in Vegas as I spent some time watching him practice. And I want to share some things with you about what I was seeing out there. Eugenio Chacarra, someone I've known for the last few years. I was texting with him this morning. He won the LIV series in Bangkok. Very talented young player. In fact, you've probably heard his name a few times on this podcast. He's from Spain. He gets the win. Eugenio will be coming on the Stripe Show podcast right after their last event in Miami, which will take place here in just a few weeks. So it'll be good to get him back on the podcast as really the youth transpires here this weekend on both the PGA Tour, Tom Kim, in the LIV series, Eugenio Chacarra. I want to talk about the official World Golf rankings and give you my opinion, my thoughts on what is happening there as well. But let's go back to Las Vegas here. I was out there for 2 nights filming some things for the show called The Cut. As many of you know, I'm a part of that show. Airs Tuesday night on Golf Channel. Some really cool things. I have a new favorite golfer. His name is Harry Hall. He's from England. He went to UNLV. The guy is an absolute gem. And we'll be getting him on the podcast as well in November. I'm not sure I've ever met a PGA Tour player quite like Harry Hall, quite that laid back, 6'4", big guy. Came over from England to go to UNLV. And we talked about how he got longer off the tee, but then how he had to get the ball up in the air more to play over here. He went to college with Taylor Montgomery. If you follow me on Twitter, I made the statement that Taylor Montgomery, I think, is the new best putter on the PGA Tour. You want to talk about someone that can roll the rock. That dude can putt, and that dude is long off the tee. He's going to be a fun one to watch, Taylor Montgomery. Harry Hall, not quite as long. Maybe not quite as polished of a player right now as a Taylor Montgomery, but the dude is a gem, an absolute hilarious gem, deep thinker. He'll be on the podcast in November. Tom Kim, of course, won the event. And he was about 22, 23 to 1 odds. I don't think anybody's surprised that Tom Kim won. Of course, he gets his win at the Wyndham Championship after, I believe, making a double bogey on the first hole. We saw the stardom and really come to fruition in the President's Cup. I've had my eye on Tom Kim for quite some time. I thought he was going to be a special player. I think he's exceeded that to this point. 2 wins now under the age of 21. When I got on the range and we were waiting for our first guest for the show, I look over to the side and Tom Kim is kind of off to the side. You know, the range gets very busy on a Wednesday. It's tough to find a spot. They look at you kind of weird when you're filming stuff. They're like, hey, we need that. No one says anything, but look, real estate, practice day, you're out there filming a few things, you kind of have to, it's a sensitive thing, because most of these guys travel with an entourage. It's not just them and their caddy, it's their agent. It's their swing guru coach. It's their putting coach. It's their sports psychologist. It's their trainer. I mean, there's some of these guys travel with quite the group, but not Tom Kim. Tom Kim's over there in the side, and he's just working on his game by himself. And his caddy's there, no entourage. And I'm watching him from a distance. I watched him for quite some time, hit some balls. And what really stood out to me with Tom Kim is not obviously he's a wonderful ball striker. He's a terrific iron player. Tom Kim has that modern game where he is going to win from a strokes gain approach standpoint. He is a terrific iron player through the bag. You're watching him hit his irons. You're watching him hit his driver. He's not real long. He's kind of a fairways, let his irons go to work. He's not going to overpower a golf course right around 300 yards off the tee, but he's accurate. He's a precision player. He's not going to overpower a golf course, driver wedge a golf course to death. He's going to keep it in front of him, be precise with his irons, solid short game, really good putter, wonderful putter. But what really stood out to me was how deliberate and how consistent he was with each and every shot that he was hitting on the range. Now, he had some interaction with his caddy, and he's kind of a lighthearted guy. And, he seems to not wear things like with a lot of stress on his shoulders. He's comfortable with himself, nice personality about him, outgoing, but very precise with his practice. I was impressed in watching him and just how consistent he was with every single ball. He was not banging balls. Every ball had a purpose. I think, Tom is pretty deliberate on the golf course. I think he's actually, a little bit on the slower aspect. If you watch him down the stretch, that was a little painful the last 3 or 4 holes. He was moving very slow. But on the range, very, very deliberate and very precise with every single shot he was hitting. Every shot you felt like had a purpose. That impressed me. It also impressed me that it was just him and his caddy. I don't see an entourage following around with Tom Kim pumping it up. I don't get the idea that his head is going to get too big here for the situation. He seems grounded. He's got a personality. And there's a sense of ownership of what's happening with him. I love the question at the end there. Are you surprised by your success? And he kind of said, yeah, yes and no. I've put the work in. I feel like I belong here. The ownership is there, and I like that. The other thing I like about Tom Kim is there's a sense that there's a sense of patience out on the golf course. There's a sense of letting the tournament come to you. There's the sense of he's not going to press, right? Like when he won Wyndham, he makes a double on the first hole. No big deal. Just kind of works his way through it and just continues to make birdies, climb the leaderboard, and then he ends up winning at the end. You watch him down the stretch on Sunday in Vegas. Got a 2-shot lead over Patrick Cantlay, who no one has played that golf course better than Patrick Cantlay, former champion. And here comes Cantlay. When Cantlay starts making birdies and that stone face, I mean, maybe he could have been a little intimidated perhaps down the stretch. He rolls into 15 and 16, two holes that you should birdie. Kim doesn't. Cantlay does. Now we're tied going into the hardest hole in the course, which was the par 3 17th. But you didn't get the sense that Kim panicked, right? I mean, situation, he's like, fine. Give me the iron, long iron shot, hits it to the middle of the green, 2 putts. They go to 18 tied. And Cantlay makes the big mistake, makes triple. And Tom Kim goes up there, hits it in the middle of the green, 2 putts, and makes par for a second win and a 3-shot victory. Impressive. Patient. Let the round come to him. Let the tournament come to him. No sense of panic. You're not going to be intimidated by a Patrick Cantlay who's won 8 times, who's one of the best players in the world. That's a 20-year-old young man from South Korea who is just coming off the stage of the President's Cup and being the star of the international team, just coming off his first win before that. The American audience, the world audience is excited. The expectations are going up. He's becoming a superstar. And what does he do the next time we see him? He goes out and wins. I mean, are you kidding me? The kid's special. We knew that, I think, coming in. You could see it. You could sense it. But he's exceeded even my expectations to this point. And to see it in person in Vegas was pretty cool. You know, the maturity. I love the fact that he doesn't have an entourage. Of course, when I'm out there, I get to see a lot of other teachers and players and whatnot. And, you know, I'm talking to another teacher who's a putting coach. And I'm like, well, when are you heading out of here? And he's like, oh, I'm here all week. I'm like, you're here all week? Weren't you there all last week too and the week before? Yeah. I'm like, why? You know, like, why do you need your putting coach there all week if I'm a player? Like, some of this doesn't even make sense to me. I think it's more of a comfort thing, more of perhaps a friendship thing with some of these players and coaches. But I just think it's overdone in general in the end. And I know every player has his own needs and this and that. But to have your putting coach there all week at the Shriners Open, and this is a fairly established player, I don't know. It just feels overdone to me. It feels overcoached to me. But that's kind of where we are. Like, when you have the money and you get a little lonely out there, maybe you just kind of, why don't you stay around all week? And the next week, why don't you just go ahead and stay around this week too? And then, why don't you just go ahead and jump on the charter with me and head to Japan, if you don't mind? And that's just kind of, what money can buy these days. And I like that, I bring that up because I kind of like it with Tom Kim. It seems simple. It doesn't seem overthought. It doesn't seem overcoached. There's an ownership there as the player. And I think that's really important. I'm going to be doing a breakdown of Tom Kim and some of the things I think he's working on as I watched him on the range and rehearsing and some of the things that he's working on. It's interesting. Like, when you're on the range and you talk to these players, they're all working on something. It feels like, very seldom do you come up to a person and say, a player, and like, hey, what are you working on? They're like, nothing. Until I get to Las Vegas and I meet this guy by the name of Harry Hall, who missed the cut in his first two. He's a rookie who missed the cut in his first two events. And he points out to me before we go on air, right before we go on air, he says, I'm in last place in strokes gained off the tee and strokes gained approach after the first 2 weeks. And I said, Harry, I said, you're right, but you're first in strokes gained putting. And he says, good point. And there he is, just kind of hanging out. He's got that European hat, that kind of, what is a skipper's hat like Bryson used to wear, Payne Stewart. And, he's just kind of making light of it a little bit before we go on air. But I asked him, I said, well, are you working on some things right now? And he says, I just overthought it. He goes, I was a little nervous and just, too many expectations, or just kind of put too much pressure on myself. And I'm just going to loosen up a little this week and play. And he did. And he finished in the top 20, played nicely. He knows that course, went to UNLV, finished in the top 10 last year. Let's hope Harry Hall can continue to make it and gain confidence, because he's a gem. We need him out there. I hope he wins one day and we get to see an interview with him. Because you want to talk about just bringing it down to reality and keeping grounded and staying grounded as a professional golfer. That's as grounded as you're going to get, Harry Hall. And I'm going to tell you something. Tom Kim, I think, is right there with him. And I think that's important. I think that has some value. So it was a good trip. Look forward to the cut coming out. Look for it on Tuesdays. I didn't play any dice. I didn't play any cards, which is kind of, I was so tired. It was hot, 95. I mean, we spent the whole day out there. I got back. I got a little something to eat, and I went straight to bed, which is not like me. I'm usually good for, 2-3 hour sesh and losing some money on the craps table or some cards, but I didn't even do that, which is just another sign that I'm getting old and very, very boring. Anyway, moving on back to Jacksonville. Furyk and friends, Steve Stricker wins that event. And it was great to be out there. That's a cool event. Ferrick has done a nice job. Who's been on the podcast, local guy. I'm looking to get him into the studio here this winter, and I think he would be a great discussion in here. Get him into the About Golf Simulator, hit some shots. But it was a cool event, and I'm super excited, folks. I am super excited about my partnership with ViStar, because here coming up this week, I'm going to give you some instructions on how to nominate your veteran hero. Perhaps you've had someone who's a veteran in your family. Veterans Day is coming up. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to nominate a veteran. And we've got some incredible prizes, okay? There's going to be some incredible stuff that we're going to be picking some veterans and sending them some stuff and giving them experiences for their service. So I'm really, really excited about that. More on that this week. Eugenio Chacarra wins the LIV series. Now stay with me. Don't turn it off. I know, but some of you right now may not be all in on LIV. I'm certainly not. As I've said, I don't necessarily, like where the money's coming from. I don't necessarily agree with everything that LIV is doing, but I'm being open-minded. I want to be open-minded. I think there are some things that I do like. One of the things that I do like, one of the people that I do like is Eugenio Chacarra. I've known him for the last couple years. He will be coming on the podcast after their final event in Miami in a few weeks. I got to watch Eugenio play at the PXG College Showcase a couple years ago and got to know him as a person. At Oklahoma State from Spain, Sergio Garcia is his coach. He left college early to go to live and struggled in the first few events, but came out and blitzed him 1 by 3. Very talented player. When we arrived on site, he just got done shooting 59 on the other course. There's 2 courses there. One of them's called the other course. And he shot 59. And the first thing he said to me, I think I need to get my irons bent 1 more degree flat. I was like, whoa. I was like, well, you just shot 59. And the first thing that you say after that round is you feel like you need to get your irons bent 1 degree flatter. Yep. Okay. I mean, talented player. Got some good disc length off the tee. Nice iron player. Kind of putts with the high handle putting stroke. Rolls it beautifully. And a really charming, nice, polite, respectful man. I thought it was very cool. John Rahm over in Spain in the tournament as well that he was playing in, call that out and congratulate Chacarra. I thought that was very cool. It's easy right now in today's climate and environment to get so caught up emotionally and to say, no, you're on that side and we're on this side, and I don't like you anymore. It's really easy to take that approach. But John didn't, and John's from Spain, of course, and he congratulated him. I thought that was really nice of John, staying above the fray a little bit. Now, I'm sure there's some bad vibes with certain players, and you don't have to agree with everything that's going on there with LIV, but it's here. It's here. And I don't think it's going anywhere. And I think as we transition now into the last thing I want to talk about here on the podcast, which is the official World Golf ranking, right? Because that's really now where the narrative is coming. Some of these lawsuits are playing out, right? And we know there's a long runway. Had a lot of the players that were originally on these lawsuits are taking their name off. Only 3 now are still on the list. Peter Eugenio. Haymaker Coffee Company was established in 2021 to create the best coffee to fuel the underdogs who perseveres, who hustles, and have the give-it-all mentality to achieve their American dream. Haymaker Coffee only roasts top quality, specialty-grade coffee beans, resulting in brews that satisfies those who demand every drop from their coffee and day. If you work hard, run hard, fight hard, and play hard, we have your coffee right here. The other 2 are not kind of slipping my brain right now, but those three remain to the PGA Tour. The PGA Tour now counters a lawsuit back to LIV. We got the Patrick. Okay, so those lawsuits are playing themselves out. But the one thing we know is LIV is here, and they're into their schedule. They have one more event over in Asia, and they're going to come back to Miami and finish things up. Oh, by the way, with the LIV, get excited, folks. Dustin Johnson, through the first 6 events, just won $18 million as he clinches the 2022 LIV Golf Individual Champion Award. I didn't even know that existed. I didn't even know that was kind of the thing through the first 6 events, but it is. And it's Dustin Johnson for his consistent play, and he wins $18 million. Get excited. The other thing with LIV, I shouldn't say the other thing, but back to official World Golf rankings. At what point are you just numb to like 2 million? You're just numb to it. Like, wait, what'd you say? Like, how much is it? 2 million. Nah, I'm good. Like, what gets you excited anymore? Like, when you have this enterprise and this series, this tour, this LIV, and there's just it's just this buy, spend, and it's all this money. Everybody's got money, right? It's that rich uncle. Hey, do you have another $1 million maybe you could spare me? Yeah, there you go. And DJ signs for what? 150 million, let's just say. And he's the team events they've won. Of course, he won a tournament at 4 million. And then another $1 million for this team win, and another $1 million for this team win, and another $1 million for this team win. And all of a sudden, they probably send him a text, hey, congrats, DJ, you just won the individual champ. Oh, really? Yeah, it's 18 million. Oh, great. Like, at what point do you just numb to like another 2 mil? Just numb to it. Hey, you won this. How much was that? 1.5 mil. Click. This hijacking of golf, right? Buying of professional golf. Spend. Enormous amounts of money. That's what we are. That's the LIV series. I don't agree with it, but it's here. It's here. It doesn't seem like it's going to be going away for the next 2 to 3 years. Now, the conversation, of course, with LIV now is the official World Golf rankings. They need World Golf rankings for their players because they're plummeting down these rankings. So the question becomes, what is LIV going to do to get those official World Golf rankings? Well, of course, Greg Norman, his typical kind of bully mentality, he just is going to come in and say, hey, we deserve rankings. And oh, by the way, we want to retroactive them back. Even though, what we've been doing doesn't fit the guidelines of the official World Golf rankings and how you should apply and what the criteria is. Yeah, you need to go ahead and go back and retroactive those, right? And of course, Bryson jumps on that. This is unfair, and we should be getting points. This is bad for golf. And I'm paraphrasing, but a typical Bryson kind of soapboxing, when Bryson and others knew damn well at the current time when they left the PGA Tour that this was probably going to be the case, that you weren't going to get official World Golf ranking points. There is a process to go through to get official World Golf rankings. That's the way it works, the way it has been. So when you left and you took all that money, you knew that was going to be the case. Now, you may have been sold from Greg Norman and his team that, hell yeah, we'll get official World Golf ranking. Don't worry about it. Come on. But you're not. That's not the way it works. And to the defense of the official World Golf ranking team that consists of the 4 major championships, the PGA Tour, the DP World Tour, the International Federation of PGA Tours, this board that, basically puts this together. So no matter where you play, you have these ranking points that allow you to qualify, that get you into the major championships. And no one's going to disagree that the major championships, the 4 major championships, are the most important events. That is the history of golf, the most important things, 4 major championships. So there's a process to this. to get official world golf ranking points. And of course, Greg Norman just thinks he can come in and spend, buy, bully. And they're like, no, it's not the way it works. They can't give in. Can't give in to that. And Bryce says, this is so unfair. No, it's not unfair. You got paid healthy to go do that. Very healthy. And that's why the money was there in place. Now, you've been maybe told one thing and the other's happening, but that's on you. That's on you, Patrick Reed. That's on you, Bryson DeChambeau. So that's where we are, right? And now the question becomes, the other side of this story is how now is the official World Golf Ranking going to handle this, right? I don't think they should be issuing points retroactively. I don't think they should let Greg Norman come in and bully and tell him exactly what needs to be happening. And this is the way the thing should be. No, I don't agree with that. But I do think we need to look at this long term. The landscape of professional golf is changing. The landscape of professional golf is changing. And it's going to continue to change. There is a competitor at the table. There might be another competitor at the table in 10 to 15 years. I don't know. So how do we look at this objectively? Let's look through some of the criteria as a new tour series comes about and what needs to happen in order to get official World Golf Ranking points. So the first speaks to one of these sponsor tours that's already currently part of official World Golf Rankings. They need to propose this. Sorry, let me scroll back up here real quick. They need to basically bring to the table this new tour, this new series, right? We want to nominate LIV into the official World Golf Ranking points. Someone's going to sponsor them into that. And that's what the Asian Tour did, right? So they kind of checked that box. The second thing is there needs to be an opportunity for players from the new tour to gain access to the sponsoring tour. So in this case, LIV players, they need to be able to play on the Asian Tour, which they can, right? That's been well noted. You've seen Patrick Reed go over there and play in some of the Asian Tour events, which makes complete sense because, you know, Patrick Reed basically said, look, I got more time to spend at home with my family now, as he just finishes up his 7th tournament in a row. There needs to be a chance to qualify for the tour, right? So like for the PGA Tour, you've got Q School, which is coming back this year. You've got the Korn Ferry Tour. You know, there's got to be an avenue that kind of works up to the PGA Tour. Now, I think in from Liv's standpoint, they have started to do some of these things with the Asian Tour, and there's going to be a process that's going to kind of feed some of those things. It appears, but I don't think that picture is really clear yet. And I think that's important to one of these next points, which is there's a process that goes through in evaluating this new tour and whether they're going to get points or not. And it usually takes like 12 to 18 months, which I think is important here. That this just isn't, hey, new tour, a lot of money. Yeah, let's give them all these points. Like, what's the legitimacy of this tour? You got to let it play out. Let's see it. Let's see it for at least a year and a half, and then the points. I think that's valid. I think that's a really important aspect of this. Are you legitimate? Are you in this for the long haul? 12 to 18 months seems reasonable. I was probably thinking closer to 2 years. I was thinking, look, this tour needs to be around for 2 years. I want to see it play out from the beginning into the end, year one, and then what did you do different year two? Okay, and now we start to bring some points up. I think that's very legitimate. And one of those is so you can get, and the reason is because so you can get this qualifying aspect figured out. That can be complicated. There's a lot of moving parts there. So for Liv, I don't think it's fully figured out yet that how do you kind of work yourself into these 48 players other than just saying, hey, we want you to play and you not to play. Here's 7 million and here's 2 million to go away. Right? Like there's got to be a way to work yourself into that. the amount of players in the event. So here's kind of a key thing. I'm going to read this off this golf.com article here. So there needs to be an average of at least 75 players per tournament field. That's an issue for LIV, whose shotgun start features 48. But they believe they're built in a workaround thanks to the Asian Tour's International Series, which features 144 players. So I think that's worded very properly, and that you've got these, we need to meet this average of 75. And of course, we know LIV is 48. But again, this Asian Tour and this feeder system, it sounds like there's going to be 144 there. So there's going to be a way to maybe meet that average, but that's unclear. And again, that goes back to that time frame that I was talking about. Let's see that work out. Let's see it. Let me understand it, execute it, and then execute it again and make adjustments that fits the criteria. I think that's very logical, very logical. And then, of course, the 72-hole tournaments, right? Which I think also is logical. Like the 72-hole tournament. Now, we know LIV is 54. There has to be a cut. We know, though, there's ways around that in the PGA Tour, and they have shorter fields, the Tour Championship, the Century Tournament of Champions. I think there's only 72 in this next week's event at CJ Cup. So there's ways around it. And I think these smaller fields are part of it too. Like, I think that's okay, but there has to be adequate 72-hole events. I believe that there has to be a sufficient amount of 72-hole events. Now, how many? I'm not sure. I'm the guy qualified to say exactly how many that needs to be. But I do think, with all of that said, and you look at LIV and you look at, okay, if you can take this next year or two and you can start meeting some of this criteria, then there'd be no way for them to deny him access, right? And they shouldn't deny him access, because in the end, what needs to happen here, the end result, what needs to happen here, and whether LIV can put their ego aside and put their wallet aside for enough time to think through this, to give an avenue for their top players to the major championships. Because in the end, we need the best players in the major championships. The major championships needs to stay above the fray. I'm all for all of these LIV guys playing in major championships if they qualify. I'm for it. That has to happen. We can't lose that. Golf, the game of golf starts to really, in the professional world, get diminished and damaged if in the 4 major championships you don't have the best players there. And right now, when you look at the LIV, and put the official World Golf Rankings down for a minute, they have a lot of the best players. Now, they don't have the majority of them, but they have a lot of them. Do we really want 4 major championships with no Dustin Johnson, with no Cam Smith, with no Bryson DeChambeau, with no Brooks Koepka, with no Abraham Ancer, with no Taylor Gooch, with no Eugenio Chacarra? Like, come on. Like, that's just, we don't want that. I don't want that. And I know they made the decision to go over there for the official World Golf, and I get that. Like, okay, for the first year or two, but long term, if LIV is going to be around and they meet that criteria over 12 to 18 months, and they start putting things in place that meet this and off they go, then yeah, you can't deny them that. Come on. That doesn't make sense. And I think with that said, I do think the official World Golf Rankings needs to look at this, in that the landscape is changing a little bit in professional golf. The world is changing. When this criteria was written years and years ago, I think it started back in like the 1960s, and I'm sure it's been, edited here and there, but like, we have to continue to be able to look ahead and understand that the world is different now, that the consumer is going to be different. It's going to be younger. Time frames, like even everything that I do in working in tighter corridors and windows, keep it short, keep it sweet. Don't do it this long, do it shorter. We don't have that much time. We don't have that much ability to concentrate. Like, I do think the official World Golf Rankings needs to take that into consideration. And I think LIV can have something to offer there in maybe a product that can help that. I think the PGA Tour needs to kind of entertain that as well, and the elevated events and those kinds of things, and how many people are going to be playing. So I think that there is, in the future, like, I do think the way that this thing should be designed should be with the consumer in mind, with the 4 major championships in mind, staying above the fray, and that we want the best players in these fields. So what does that look like? Right? Let's say through 12 to 18 months, through a 2-year span, whatever, like, okay, these guys are legit. They've executed this and that. They have a feeder system through the Asian tour. And we also recognize that, look, there needs to be adequate 72-hole events, but we're also cool in the world of professional golf with some 54-hole events. We're cool with some entertainment types of packages that are going to have less world golf rankings, but we recognize the fact that the world is moving that way, and we want to have some of those things, and they have value on the betterment of the game. But we need a sufficient amount of 72-hole events, and here's how many we need. Right? So you can have that, but you can also have some flexibility, as you've had in the past, with smaller fields, with no-cut situations that allows for more, I don't know, lack of a better word, exhibition types of things. I don't see the problem with that. I mean, Tiger and Rory are creating this product that's going to be tighter windows, more action-based, lead with entertainment, those types of things. I mean, I think we all recognize, like, we need to be moving that way. We all recognize that we need to be moving that way to some degree. So in the world of professional golf, when your core audience is not watching the television as much as they used to, and the audience needs to continue to get younger, why wouldn't you make that part of the criteria as well? Because you don't like live and you don't like where the money's coming from? Is that why? So I think it's going to be very hard for people to look at this objectively. I really do. I just, because they're, it's hard for me to look at it, but those are some of the things that I feel like are important as I read the criteria. Yeah, I stand with them. You can't give into this bully mentality of Greg Norman, just buy, do this, do that. Like, no, this is the way it has been. This is the way it is right now. You want this, you got to come in and you got to start doing these things. Now, in the future, if I'm one of the 4 major championships and I'm sitting at the table and I see this competitor, a lot of money, and I start looking ahead that there might be more of this, and I know that I want the best players in the world at my tournament, because that's why they're called major championships, and I see where the landscape is changing and how the audience is changing, I got to start thinking about, all right, well, there are some valid points here on this side. Why don't we start looking at some of those things for the betterment of what we're all doing here in the game of golf? Give some flexibility to the PGA Tour to do some of the things that they want to do, perhaps, and modify this thing for the next, 20, 25 years. Like, I think that's adequate. I do. Especially when you have a caliber of player like Dustin Johnson and Cameron Smith and Brooks Koepka and Bryson DeChambeau. And then, like, I know why they went over there for the money, but if they've went through 12 to 18 months and they're doing these things, and we're able to kind of look ahead and make some adjustments, and we're able to kind of, keep this thing where all the best players are playing in major championships, I don't see what's wrong with that either. I don't. So it's going to be fascinating. Anyway, a few thoughts there. I know I rambled a little bit, but this official World Golf Ranking stuff is fascinating. I think from an LIV perspective, I think it'll be really interesting to see as they kind of, I think what's going to be really, and I'll finish with this. I think what's really going to be interesting is the guys that are stroking the check, this LIV investment group, and they look at what Greg Norman's doing and his approach and how he's going about it. I think they're going to have to reposition that a little bit. I'm not quite so sure Greg Norman's the guy if I'm LIV. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, we got to do some things here and here, but we also need to be able to come to the table and at least have some people listen to us on our ideas and how we can enhance these major championships and this and that. And I just don't think Greg Norman's approach and the way that he speaks to the media, I just don't think that's the approach. I just don't. And I'm just curious if we don't see another name and another face, not someone behind the mic that can go about this a little bit differently with a little different tone. I think that'll be interesting to see. All right. Jeff Feinberg joins me tomorrow. I can't wait for that because Jeff's a Toronto Blue Jays fan. And guess what? The Seattle Mariners, baby, going on to round 2, come back 8-1, win 10-9. Amazing. I had multiple drinks Saturday night. I had a tear running down my face. I was like, I can't even believe it. Just won our first playoff series in 21 years. And it feels great. So back with Jeff tomorrow. I can't wait to rub it in. No, I'm just kidding. I love Jeff. And we'll be breaking down the CJ Cup. Thanks for being here. See you tomorrow. Haymaker Coffee Company was established in 2021 to create the best coffee to fuel the underdogs who perseveres, who hustles, and have the give-it-all mentality to achieve their American dream. Haymaker Coffee only roasts top quality, specialty grade coffee beans, resulting in brews that satisfies those who demand every drop from their coffee and day. If you work hard, run hard, fight hard, and play hard, we have your coffee right here.